Welcome to the Buck Stops here. It's the Hall of Fame Show, Season 1, Episode 38, and I'm your host, The Buck, Kirk Buchner, owner, operator of NotInHallOfFame.com, and of course the sister sites, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's Season 1, Episode 38 of the Hall of Fame Show, and Evan Nolan and I, we got quite a bit to talk about. 3 legends in the Hall of Fame world passed away in the recent week. Tommy DeVito, member of the Four Seasons, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, passed away at the age of 92. Chicago Bears running back Gale Sayers, possibly the greatest of his position in the last half of the 1960s and the youngest man ever to be elected into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's also passed. We also looked at Road Warrior Animal from the WWE Hall of Fame, inducted in 2011. Another legend, one half of arguably the greatest tag team in pro wrestling history, if not at least the last 30 years. We also looked at the induction of Joe Buck into the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the International Tennis Hall of Fame. They announced their possible nominees for the class of 2021. It's always a fun show. Evan and I, we generally go off topic. Hey, but that's okay. That's what we do. So sit back, have some fun, and you might just learn something before it's done. Hey. Without further ado, here's Evan. Evan, how goes life in the Windy City?
It goes pretty well, I guess. I never really leave my house. I don't know whether I live at work or work from my home at this point. But, yeah, it's going all right. How about you? How the frogs? How's the island?
The frogs are pretty loud, as you can hear. I think what I might start doing is I might just go to my wife's work hotel on a few nights to try to see how that might work. And if they'll sort of let me do that. I don't know. No one's really complained about the frogs other than you and I. I mean, there's a lot of, I think it bothers us more than people who are listening. They just sort of accept it.
I mean, are we the only people listening? That could be a problem.
I got a couple YouTube comments on the last thing, so I mean, people are listening.
That is true. People are listening. That's true. I was fishing for a compliment, or reinforcement that we are actually, 30. How many episodes are we now? 38, 37.
This is episode 38.
38.
Yes. Wow. Which lasted longer than Man. I was gonna say it lasted longer than Man vs. Beast.
I think 2 more we get syndication.
Oh wow!
So.
Awesome. I was telling my dad it's an award-winning Hall of Fame podcast, and he said, like, what award? Then I held up my dog. He said, this is the award. The magic of FaceTime, everyone. Gotta love technology. Gotta hate technology.
Mm-hmm.
So we were talking. So like right before we decided to go on air. It seems like every week we've got some deaths to cover, but you had a great idea. Let's just sort of like talk about something fun to kick off. Because there's a legend's birthday today.
Yes, Mean Joe Green, his birthday is today. So that was all over the interwebs. But yeah, Mean Joe Green turned, hold on a second, I accidentally closed my little tab. He was born September 24th, 1946, meaning Mean Joe turned 74 today. Probably, a Hall of Fame player known almost as well for his Coca-Cola commercial, probably as his playing career at this point.
I'd say so. That's how I first actually knew who he was, because that was like when I was a little kid, and that commercial was everywhere, and that was sort of before I was watching sports.
Mm-hmm.
So, I remember that commercial like it was yesterday. Just this big, imposing individual. Here, have a Coke. And just like after sort of like a tough day on the gridiron. Like, what if I don't know? You think he makes the case for the best defensive player ever?
Ooh,
he's in that conversation.
Probably in that conversation. I'm sure there are some Chicago linebackers who have something to say about that. And
Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah, Lawrence Taylor would have something to say about that. And I don't know. It's hard to say.
Mm-hmm.
But he's probably in the conversation for it. But Yeah, we always talk about the deaths, so I figured why not happy birthday to Mean Joe today.
Yeah, and especially considering we've got a few very significant ones that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
And also, you mentioned to me that it's a big anniversary. That was a big day for us in Canada for 3 days. So what was it?
Yes.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was the 32nd anniversary of Canada's crowning non-hockey achievement in sports.
Yep. Ben Johnson defeats Carl Lewis, which is how we got into that whole man versus beast thing earlier. In the 100-meter set, what was it? 973?
979.
979. Okay. And yeah, and just as a Canadian, what would I have been? I would have been 16. So I certainly remember this, very vividly. I watched that. My dad watched it. My dad doesn't give a crap about sports in the least, but he watched that. And, it was a big source of national pride because, again, remember in Canada, as you mentioned, hockey is pretty much everything. But with the exception of the Canada Cup, which is the precursor to the World Cup, there wasn't any way that we proved ourselves on the world stage before that athletically. So winning this high-profile thing, it was a big deal. Now, 3 days after, when he tests positive, you know how every single Canadian news outlet described him after?
How?
Jamaican-born sprinter. Like, right after, bam, it's without fail, whether it was didn't matter what news network it was. I can't even remember if we had TSN yet, but that's how he was described all the way through. It was just so quick to sort of distance from that. And it was a massive embarrassment. And then a year later, what you may not know, in Canada they had what was called the Dublin Inquiry, which was, I guess, basically our version of sort of I guess when Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa, Palmero, and Clemens, I forget the fifth person. Not Clemens. No, Clemens wasn't there. It doesn't matter. Testified before Congress. I'm sorry?
It was Kurt Schilling.
Oh, Kurt Schilling. Okay. So they pretty much had the same sort of idea, just to find out how rampant the steroid issue was. And so that basically, it took all that just for Ben Johnson to say, yeah, I took steroids. So my dad, again, sometimes he puts things in perfect perspective, just said, so let me get this straight. We just paid $30 million so that we could learn what we already knew? What a waste.
By the way, make sure you get that consul general their money.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, also Rafael Palmero's birthday today. So.
Oh. Well, something celebrated by probably not even his family.
Oh, I'm sure that his family loves him.
I'm sure they do. I've been trying to find this clip for years on YouTube, but I can't find it. It was during the All-Star Games. I guess it probably been the last one that Palmero was at, because he was only at 3. And whoever was the announcers did a pregame clip interviewing, it was Bonds and McGuire, because they were both members of the 500 Home Run Club. And then all of a sudden, Palmero shows up like, "Hey guys!" It was and you can just look at those two, like Bonds and McGuire's like, "Hi, Rafi." It's like, don't forget about me. Here I
am. Back when chicks dig the long ball, they don't anymore. I don't think so.
The
way baseball goes now, they dig the strikeout more than anything.
Oh, that is true. That is true. So I guess we gotta what would we call her? Beige Mistress has struck again.
She has, yes. The Beige Mistress has struck again. This time her victim was Karoli Fater, and I have no idea if I'm pronouncing anything in Hungarian correctly, so all people in Budapest and Pécs and Szeged, I believe is how you pronounce that other one. Those are the only cities I know in Hungary. Can all write in. If you write in, text in, troll in, whatever they do. But gold medal winner at the 1968 Olympics when Hungary took home the gold in soccer. passed away at the age of 80. So I can't even tell you what position he played. He he appeared in one game in the Olympics for them, and that was it. But yes, another Olympian for Hungary has passed away, giving us, as far as I've been checking, I believe that is now 23 out of 24 weeks since I started noticing that we've had a Hungarian Olympic athlete pass away.
All right, Hungary, if you've got a version of the FBI, I mean, like, investigate this. This is serious. Like, I'm just picturing now this Hungarian Legion of Doom. Meanwhile, back in Budapest.
Whatever the Hungarian version of the old East German secret police, the Stasi, is, that's they got to have something like that, right?
Oh, has to. And I think, isn't that built in once you became a member of the Soviet bloc?
Yeah, you got your own version of the Stasi or the KGB or whatever the heck it was. So, yeah, there's still got to be some of those guys around. What else are they doing? These are their heroes. I mean, the people for the 56, 68 Olympics, those are the people who were their contemporaries. Mm-hmm. Go investigate this crap.
So where do we go from here? Do we go from some of our big names, or should we just look at something that actually happened while we were talking last week?
Maybe we start with that. Let's start with that.
Yeah, so we do this every Thursday night, and now that Thursday Night Football is back, I paused it because I was watching the last week's game, the Battle of Ohio, and it was at halftime, and David Baker was there just sort of like frozen on my screen, and I didn't really, I should have, because it's a Hall of Fame commissioner, I should have like just let that play out before I called you. But as it turned out, he awarded Joe Buck the Pete Rozelle Award, which, I mean, yeah, you don't get a bus, but you're in the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
Yeah, you're in Canton anyway. You say welcome to Canton. Mm-hmm. He and his dad become the first ever father and son duo to be so enshrined.
Yeah, it's a really big deal. I know that a lot of people, at least the Twitterverse anyway, doesn't seem to be a fan of Joe Buck. I personally love the guy. I love his commentary. I think he's really good. What are your thoughts on Joe?
He has slightly grown on me over time. I used to find him entirely insufferable, but I think having heard him as a person, like on podcasts and things outside of play-by-play, I like him more than I did before, because it's much like possibly the worst song ever written is You're Beautiful by James Blunt.
Agreed.
But James Blunt is so like self-effacing and kind of snarky about that song that I like James Blunt while hating the song. I kind of like Joe Buck now, while not necessarily always being the biggest fan of his play-by-play. I like him better, I think, in football than I do in baseball. Okay. But I mean, he's been the voice of the World Series now for 25 years. And then that little thing they had when he found out he got the award, which was kind of cool. He got it live on air without knowing that it was happening. They said that he and this made me feel old, that he and Troy Aikman have been partners now for 19 years.
Oh, wow.
Which makes them the second longest pairing for a lead team for football, or lead announcing team for football in the history of football. I didn't look up who number one was. I'm guessing it's probably Frank, is Danny Don Meredith and Howard Cosell, maybe? Or is it, it's probably Matt and Summerall, right?
In terms of longevity, I would say so. I don't know if this makes Aikman and Joe Buck I'm sure they're not the only two Hall of Famers to call games together, but there can't be too many. I'll have to look that up and answer that next week, because I can't see how there's that many other than those two. There has to be.
Used to go with, was it? I know he's with. I think he's with Iron Eagle now, but did he used to be with Keith Jackson?
I don't know. But yeah,
I don't know. That's the first possibility that comes to mind. By the way, I miss Keith Jackson. That dude was awesome.
I agree. I totally agree. Joe Buck is someone I do like. I never understood the complete hatred, but he does have, and I think you and I have used this word before, maybe I know that I have, the punchable douche face.
Yeah, he comes out to smarmy.
And there is something to be said about a guy whose admitted addiction is hair plugs.
Yeah. And there's also the kind of the feeling, I mean, he started calling games as a 25-year-old. He's the youngest ever to be the lead announcer on games. It just kind of felt a little bit like nepotism at the time. But the dude is all over the place and does a lot of stuff. And he's constantly traveling, doing all sorts of games and everything. And he's only, 52, 53 now, probably?
I guess, yeah.
And got to be one of the younger people ever to get this sort of award. And actually, we'll talk about the youngest person to get a similar award, probably coming up here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
But it's hard for me to argue that Joe Buck isn't worthy based off of the criteria that they're using.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. One thing that I remember is, again, just sort of like going back as a little kid when I started watching football, and I remember having a conversation with one of my uncles, because at that point, I hadn't really sort of like established my fandom to the Saints yet, and even if I had, they were hardly ever on TV. And I remember, like, as a 9 or 10-year-old, just sort of like admitting sheepishly and thinking I was going to get a dumb answer or like a dumb look back. And I said, like, sometimes like the games I'm going to watch, because it was back, you'd either have a CBS game or an NBC game. I think that was the cases then. You'd have like a choice of one or the other, and if the Bills were playing, everything would be blacked out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd usually pick the game based on the announcers.
Mm-hmm.
And it is important. Like, announcers mean so much. And as much as I actually like Joe Buck, I cannot stand Troy Aikman. I think he's a horrible analyst.
Aikman is not the greatest, but he's still better than quite a few. I mean, every time you got Dan Fouts, you're like, oh my God, why? What did we do wrong? I will say, I watched, was it opening night, Jonathan Vilma did his first game, a former Saint. I really enjoyed Vilma as a color commentator in his first game.
Okay,
I haven't seen him since, but he was pretty good, Jonathan Vilma. Because I think he did Bears Lions.
Okay,
I think it was the Bears Lions game that he did, and he was he was actually pretty good. So it was good to see that there are some who are pretty good out there. But yeah, Troy doesn't say anything particularly useful.
Yeah, my least favorite. Actually, not my least favorite. I was going to say my favorite one in the NBA is actually Chris Webber.
Webber's pretty good.
Yeah, I think he does a fantastic job. But we should probably move on. Well, since we sort of like stuck with football, there was like a major passing. One of the greatest running backs of all time, and as you sort of alluded to, the youngest man to enter the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Gale Sayers, passed away.
Yeah, at the age of 77, and by almost all accounts, I haven't seen anything to the contrary, one of the true nicest people in the pro football history. He had less than 5,000 career rushing yards in history. He only had 39 rushing touchdowns, another 3,100 return yards, and 8 touchdowns. Member of the 60s All-Decade team, 100th anniversary All-Time team, 75th anniversary All-Time team, led the league in rushing 2 years, 66 and 69. He was Rookie of the Year in 65. Comeback Player of the Year in 69, which just goes to show you. He led the league in rushing in 66. Was injured 67 slightly, and then all of 68. Came back and led the league in rushing again in 69. Has his number retired by the Bears, but the Bears have retired more numbers even than the Celtics. But 3-time All-Big 8. His number's retired at Kansas. College Football Hall of Famer, 4-time Pro Bowler, 5-time first-team All-Pro. For someone who only played for 7 years, he did and spent large portions of those 7 years injured. There's not much more you could ask for that he could have done.
No, like nothing at all. I mean, he was, again, such a great guy. I mean, like, they could have easily named it the Gale Sayers Man of the Year.
Yeah. No, 100%. Yeah, Peyton and Sayers. Just two. It's so funny with the Bears. The Bears just always have good middle linebackers and tend to have really good running backs. It's just one of those positions. Mm-hmm. And their quarterbacks are almost always hideous. I don't care that they're 2-0. Trubisky's not good. But, yeah, I mean, and the whole bang the guns drum slowly thing with him and Brian Piccolo from back in the day. Do you remember that?
Yeah, Brian's song. I haven't seen that movie.
Brian's song, I'm sorry, not bang the drum.
Well, I thought you were doing an homage, so I was going to let it go. I thought it was an homage thing, so I just sort of... Okay. But yeah, Brian's song...
That was dumb.
All right, I haven't seen that in, 25 years, but I was sort of like looking everything up. Also, too, I mean, like, really put James Caan and Billy D on the map.
True.
And according to one article... go ahead, sorry.
I mean, Colt 45 also put Billy D on the map.
Well, that was later, wasn't it?
It doesn't matter. I just wanted to bring up Colt 45 every time.
I used to buy those big, giant bottles, too. I miss those. Damn it, I hate the fact that there's only, 4 beers I can get on a regular basis. Oh, well.
Sorry, back in college, one of my fraternity brothers in his house had a Colt 45 clock that every time I hit 45 would say, Colt 45 works every time. So every 15 minutes of the hour it would do that. So,
I mean, it's Lando Calrissian and Sonny Corleone. I mean, that's the best. That's the best duo. Period. I can't think of a better tandem.
Sonny Corleone. Fredo Corleone. Never mind. Sonny and yeah. I'm done talking. I'm screwing up everything right now with movies, and you just keep going with Gale Sayers.
But no. It was just actually I went to a Bears game. Actually, I went to 2, and with a buddy of mine he was a giant Bears fan. So he had his Gale Sayers jersey with him. So and it's just such a. There's just nothing bad that you can find about him. I don't even know why anyone would want to look for anything bad because you're not going to find it. Yeah. And just it's a huge loss. You're in Chicago. Was that I imagine that had to be bigger news there.
Yeah, I mean, it was huge news. Although I do have to say, I do want to bring up one of the stories I saw on Twitter. Mm-hmm. But after the Newtown shooting, there was one of the girls who died. Brothers had their first Pop Warner game, and they were worried that nobody's going to come, and they trying to support the Pop Warner team, and the whole town basically went to these games as they were starting. And one day, out of the blue, the dad with the Pop Warner stuff receives a football completely unsolicited in the mail, basically saying, "Keep your chin up, Gale Sayers."
Nice.
And they had never met him, anything like that. He just took the time to send a ball to someone and whatever. I just thought, just a completely out of the blue, something really nice you can do. That was just one of those stories out there after he passed that touched me. So. Mm-hmm.
And again, Gale Sayers was friends with Sonny Corleone. And another famous gangster was Tommy DeVito, who also shared the name of a member of the Four Seasons. Damn, segue, yes.
That was worthy of, if Segway didn't already have a trademark, you'd have just earned it right there with Segway in that quality. Thank you. Just came up with it. Four Seasons. You know what? When I was looking everything up, the first thing that shocked me about DeVito's passing, I didn't realize that he was that old, age 92. So when I'm doing the math backwards, he basically did not become a rock star because the Four Seasons really didn't take off until 1962. He would have been 38. 62? He would have been 34.
Oh, 34, so, sorry, but still.
Yeah. Still, he was born the same year as my dad, which means he was born the same year as Shirley Temple, to give you an idea how long ago that was. So, Gaetano DeVito passed away in Las Vegas, which is the right place for him to pass away.
Absolutely.
Was a founding member, vocalist, and lead guitarist of the Four Seasons.
Yeah, so not a really also a backup, for the doo-wop, but yeah, still, I mean, that still blew my mind. So 6 years older than Frankie Valli. What did I look up? 13 years older than Bob Gaudio, the main songwriter. So, he just persevered, teamed up with Valli, I believe, in 54? And
that sounds right.
Yeah, and then they finally sort of like made it. And I don't know this for sure, but I would have to say that probably in the early 60s, he would have been the oldest upper tier rock star. Unless I'm wrong, I don't think so. Chuck Berry maybe, but Chuck Berry wasn't as successful in the early 60s.
No, true. But Chuck Berry was born 38.
Okay. I thought he was older.
No. I mean, he was born at the age of 38. Chuck Berry always was 38 when he was starting. Chuck Berry was. I make fun of Rock Hudson being a high schooler, Steve McQueen being a high schooler in The Blob, even though he looked like he was actually like 28, but looked like he was 53. Mm-hmm. The same thing with some of those guys as well. Willie McGee, Greg Oden. There's certain people just always look way older than they actually are.
Otis Nixon.
Otis, my man Nixon. Yeah, that's another one. And Roy Orbison, I always swore lied about his age.
Oh my God!
Because when Roy Orbison was with the Traveling Wilburys, he was like allegedly 57 and looked at least 75. So,
and that really says something, considering that he was standing next to Bob Dylan.
He was only 48 at that point. Yeah, they had a picture of that, like the ages of everybody.
Oh my God!
In that famous picture, and like Jeff Lynne is 37, and George Harrison's 45. And I mean, I'm 41, and I'm not going to look that old in 4 years. So,
I'm 48. I don't think I look like Bob Dylan. Well, in terms of age, in terms of everything else, no, I never did, and I can actually sort of string a sentence together without sort of like sounding like I'm going to have a seizure. Sorry.
I was going to say that's the one rock star who you might see have a better voice than. There aren't that many. I mean, it's basically him, Macy Gray, and I can't think of his name. He's saying, "You got what I need."
Biz Markie.
Thank you. I had Amy Kamo's in my head. I knew that was wrong. Yeah, so that's it. I got Biz Markie, Macy Gray, and Bob Dylan. I can't guarantee anyone else, but I got those three. And Kesha. I can sing better than Kesha. I can do better than sing talking.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I want to ever do Kesha for that number one show, but that's another story for another time. Still, this guy had like a phenomenal career. Bowed out in 1970, and at that point, I guess he would have been like in his early 40s. And what did he have to prove? What left did he have to prove? It's not like he really bailed on the group. Just he was in his early 40s. Okay, I'm done with the road. It's all right.
Mm-hmm.
Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, vocal group Hall of Famer. In 92, he lived a long life, long, prosperous life. I'm hoping that he enjoyed, I don't know for sure, but I hope he sort of enjoyed his long retirement. And what more can you ask when you're able to do that?
Yeah, of course. The youngest of nine kids from an Italian family from New Jersey, and getting a couple of Hall of Fames, that's not so bad.
Mm-hmm.
So, but by the way, before we move on to the third major that we want to talk about, I just want to run into a couple more if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all.
Enjoy the music. So, one of whom is drummer Lee Kurzweil, passed away. He was most widely known for his time in Uriah Heep. He joined them back in '72 and played with them on and off through 2005. He took a little hiatus there in the late '70s, early '80s, and was Ozzy Osbourne's drummer for a couple of years. But Kurzweil passed away at the age of 73. One of those guys who was in a whole bunch of great albums, but unless Uriah Heep gets in, and I don't see a whole bunch of.
No.
I don't see a whole bunch towards that. He's probably one of those guys who's just going to look on the outside, or I guess looking down from the outside at this point. So he passed at 73 from cancer. We also had a couple more people from the music world here. So we had from the Emotions, a girl group from the Chicago area. Pamela Hutchinson passed away at the age of only 61.
It's too young.
They're voted by VH1 as one of the 18 most important girl groups of all time. And they're heavily sampled by all sorts of people. I mean, Tupac, LL, Wu-Tang.
Wonder why they decided
Juan, Mary J. Blige, so many of them. Even if you're not sure exactly who they are,
Best of My Love.
You would recognize some of the music.
You get the best of my love. Those who've seen what's that Mark Wahlberg movie, Boogie Nights. I think that's sort of like the first song they're using in the pool scene at Burt Reynolds' house.
That's true. I haven't seen Boogie Nights in so long. I don't think I remember the music.
That's sometimes one of my. I'll put that on like when I'm just writing late at night and I can't sleep, just sort of like as background. But that's interesting though. VH1 we're just going to stop at 18. They can't just go add 2 more and say 20.
That's work, man. Nobody wants to work.
Apparently not.
Yeah. So that was the number one hit for them. That might be on your show at some point. That went platinum back in 1977. Best of My Love. They also had number 6 hit performing with Earth, Wind, and Fire on Boogie Wonderland.
Love that song.
She passed at only 61.
Absolutely love that song. That could be one of my favorite disco funk songs. If it's not, it's top 5. It's right up there. Just brilliant.
Earth, Wind, and Fire you can't really go wrong with anything from them.
No, I mean, they could have done the song about October and it would have been just as good.
Do you remember 21st day? Oh, that happened this week. I didn't even pay attention to that. 21st of September. So, and then also passing away was a underrated songwriter, Georgia Dobbins of the Marvelettes, who are, again, one of the most important, you have to say they're one of the most important girl groups of all time.
Yeah, regardless of decade.
Motown active from 1960 and 1970, but she wrote Please Mr. Postman as well. So one of the most covered songs of all time. I definitely know that the Beatles covered it. And it's been covered so many times, but one of the most important Motown songs we're going to make in our top 25. Please Mr. Postman's way up there. So yeah, she passed earlier this week at the age of, I believe, 77. I said that and I walked away from my computer. So
yeah, we were saying like beforehand, or I was saying to you, the first time I ever heard that song was by the Carpenters.
Yeah, I think you should just strike that from your memory. As you get older, there's certain things that you should just be allowed to forget about, and that's one of them. The Carpenters cover of Please Mr. Postman is one of the first things you should have on the, as you drink, just like in the wild, the weak brain cells die first. Make sure that's one of the so go.
Well, I'm still waiting for all Linda Ronstadt's covers, so leave my head. I'm not a fan. It's all she ever did was covers.
I understand. She's okay with me. she's certainly better than Styx, who I think is probably my least favorite band of all time.
How dare you? You live in Chicago.
I know I live in Chicago. I have to tell everyone in Chicago, they still are not good. Except for the one cowboy song that I can never remember the name of. That song's okay.
I will.
But the rest of it is really, really bad.
I was going to say that I will crank up Too Much Time on My Hands if I hear it on the radio. Living in Barbados, I don't hear that on the radio.
You do. It's just a Linda Ronstadt version of it.
No, it'd actually be a cover by some island person down here. My first
UB40?
oh yeah. My first Christmas down here. I had to just listening to we'd be listening to the radio. It's like, what the hell? What songs are this? I don't know any of these songs. Never heard of that. And I had to go to. My wife had to have a procedure, and obviously I'm not going to go into too much of that. But we had to arrange stuff at the hospital, and so I had to do a bunch of that for her. And I'm in this lady's office for all that, and she's got the radio on. And she says, "Don't." And I'm not going to try to do a Bayesian accent because I've been told by my black friends never do that again, so I won't. and so it was just a Christmas song for Christmas song. But I never heard of any of these. And then she's like, "Don't you always hate how they play the same Christmas songs over and over?" Like, I never heard any of these. Mm-hmm. And she looks at me like, "What do you mean you never? Like, what do you hear? Like, Mariah Carey? I don't know. It's always the same thing." Buddy, that's a future show. The best and worst Christmas songs.
Okay.
Yeah. You're like that's a separate. Yeah, that's a separate show. Maybe
yeah.
We could also do Halloween. Now that I'm thinking about it.
That's the worst Halloween songs. There aren't that many Halloween songs, so.
Well, okay, but maybe just the best ones. I wouldn't say the worst Halloween songs, but there's 20. Just come up with 10 each of songs that put you in a Halloween mood.
Okay, I was gonna say, does "Zombie" by the Cranberries count?
Why not? If it puts you in the mood, sure.
I have to say, have you ever heard of Stephanie Maybe?
No.
Mabey? Nope. She has a song that my kids love that I recommend you find. That's a good Halloween song that goes, "If I were a zombie, I'd never eat your brain. I just want your heart. I just want your heart." It's a really fun, song, and I highly recommend it. You should find it and listen to it. It's good. So. She's talking about how she's a zombie and she just can't eat this guy because she's so in love with him and they're getting married. So,
you got to hand it to it. I mean, zombie love is forever love.
It is, yeah. And later it goes, "Our greatest times will be spent kicking off all your friends because they'll see I love this seat won't stay there." So.
I have a feeling that at some point in time, you and I, when we're finally drinking together, we'll be having a long talk about Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, God, yeah, of course. Shaun of the Dead, meant to be funny, is scarier than Dawn of the Dead, which is not meant to be funny. And Dawn of the Dead is maybe funnier than Shaun of the Dead. So,
I mean, just the whole throwing album.
The Cornetto trilogy is I mean, I'll be honest, At World's End is the weakest of the three, but Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz are two of my favorite films of my life. So
the British will always be funnier than us and better actors.
Don't tell that to Samuel L. Jackson. He'll get mad.
Does Samuel L. Jackson have a problem with the British?
Yeah, he had a whole thing a year ago at this point saying that Brits were coming over here and taking all the American roles for cheap and stuff. So it was weird. Wow. Yeah.
That's might be the weirdest appropriation take I've ever heard.
Yeah. It was weird. It was kind of out of nowhere, and then it just kind of disappeared. So he may have just been having a bad day.
I don't know. Maybe he thought he could have played Stringer Bell on The Wire. I don't know. It's wow. All right, I gotta find that.
Should we go to our last death here?
Yeah.
This one is all you.
Yeah,
I know almost nothing about this.
All right. Pro wrestler Joe Laurenitis, known as Road Warrior Animal, passed away today at yesterday at age only 60. And so, did you ever watch when did you start watching wrestling? I know you're not as big a wrestling fan as I am, but did you ever watch it on a regular basis at all?
So I watched when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. So that was the Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Jake the Snake Roberts era. And I remember at summer camp we had to do a skit, and as our group, and I had to be one of the killer bees who got my butt kicked by the bushwhackers as part of the skit. So that would probably be 1987 or so. And then I didn't really pay attention until college when my roommate had wrestling games, and that we played as a group of friends would play the games on. I don't remember what Nintendo system was at that point. And so then we'd watch some wrestling as well. So that's the Mankind, Cactus Jack, Doink the Clown, which I know a third weird one, but he was always in the wrestling game era. And then I didn't really pay attention again until Kofi. So okay. I have 3 distinct periods I was paying attention.
Yeah, the wrestling nerd in me wants to point out that the Killer Bees never wrestled the Bushwhackers, but that's another story.
It was a skit for 8-year-olds, so...
All right, fair enough. All right, so the Road Warriors were always... They got together in 1983, I believe, and I didn't see a lot of them in their heyday, which was the 1980s. And growing up in Canada... specifically the Toronto area, it was the television for wrestling was all WWE or WWF at the time. So I never saw them too much. I would always get the wrestling magazines, which would talk about all the other promotions. And I even would order, this is how long ago it was. I would actually buy get some of those videos of them wrestling in other promotions, but I had to get an international money order. And send that and wait 6 weeks for a tape to come in on VHS.
Wow.
Yeah. Meanwhile, anyone under 30 years old is probably going to have to ask somebody what VHS is.
Or a money order.
Or a money order, yeah, exactly. Or even send away. Well, what do you mean? With a stamp? Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, just a quick interruption. I remember the classic rock station had to be when I was in high school, so 96, 97 or something, had their countdown of top 1,000 rock songs of all time.
Oh, wow.
And I remember distinctly sending them an envelope with an envelope addressed to me in it that had 8 stamps on it to cover the weight of the list that they printed out for me and mailed back.
Oh, my God.
I still have that list somewhere in one of the boxes because I'm a paper hoarder. But I still have that list somewhere in one of the boxes of all of the... My goal was to get all top 1,000 rock songs on CD. So I ended up buying a whole bunch. I have a whole bunch of greatest hits albums more than actual albums because that was my goal to try and get them all. But anyway, back to your story.
Yeah, so... anyways, these two... so Animal would teamed up with a guy named Hawk, Mike Hegstrand, who passed away about 15 years ago, roughly. They were unlike any other team at the time. Clearly roided up. The mohawk haircuts, face paint, spiked leather gear. They would beat the shit out of their opponents in just a couple minutes. That was one of the rare tag teams that people would actually pay to see as the main event. By the time they got to the WWE, it was 1991, they weren't quite the same anymore, mainly because they were a little older. Everyone also, too, was on the juice. They didn't look as big, even though they were the same size. But they were champions in WWE, not WCW, but the NWA, AWA, Japan, everywhere. I did see them kind of at their worst. I only saw them live once. It was a television taping in Hamilton, Ontario, where what a taping was, they would do they taped 5 weekly shows on the weekend syndication.
Okay.
And That was when they were in the WWE for the first time. This would have been 1992. And it was really, really bad because they came out and did an interview with Mean Gene Okerlund. And so they had their manager, Paul Ellering. He says, we're going to take you back to like the good old times. Remember when you were young and you were ruthless. I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember exactly what he said because they never did air it on television because it was so bad. And they brought out a ventriloquist dummy. And it was named Freckles.
Oh, okay.
And the entire crowd, who loved the Road Warriors, I mean, they were renamed Legion of Doom, but it didn't matter. Like, you could not help but love them. But the crowd there in Hamilton were just kind of all looking at each other like, what the hell is this? Like these two jacked up guys were inspired by it looked like, what was it, Tommy Talker, if you remember that shit.
I don't.
Just as well.
Okay. We're talking a Charlie McCarthy, Mortimer Sneed one going.
Something like that. Something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
And
I just want to make sure we're bringing in our audience from born in the 1930s and 40s. Go ahead.
Hey, why not? Hey, they might be. Hey, help me turn on this computer. Meanwhile, everyone's thinking I'm old, but that's all right. But the worst part is, for whatever reason, because it was a taping, right? It didn't. Something must have went wrong, so they sent them back out to do the same thing again with the same skit, where like Animal and Hawk are looking like, "Hey, Paul, what do you got? What do you got there?" Like, "Oh, Freckles, we remember you," and they got booed. Probably the first time ever they ever got booed when they weren't trying to, and that never aired. But they did put out skits where they did find their dummy, only now he was called Rocco, because that solved everything.
Yeah, it was definitely a name change that was needed.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this isn't exactly the tribute I wanted to give to Joe Laurenitis, but that was the only time I ever saw him perform live, and Jesus, I wish it was a better thing than that. Long story short, I mean, like, this is a guy who was one half of probably one of the most important tag teams that ever existed. His son was a first-round pick in the NFL, James Laurenitis.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was a relation there. So.
Yeah. So, I mean, which again just sort of like makes me feel so old that, like, oh my God, somebody I grew up watching, now his son's retired. So, and he had a fantastic career, mostly with the Rams. But yeah, he died at 60, and apparently the day he died, he did a podcast that morning. So probably just unfortunately when you're doing that much steroids, it just all catches up to you. The human body is not meant to do some of the stuff it does. And I think that's sort of like when people are thinking about like a pro football. Like, oh, it's the hitting that sort of like not eliminates them, but where they pass away early. I think a big part of that is not so much the hits as it is just everything they're doing to be competitive that other athletes don't necessarily have to do. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know, but it can't help.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, that definitely can't. It just can't help to. I mean, I don't know if you have seen Gronk. Have you noticed Gronk's body?
There's a lot less of it to notice, but yes.
A lot less of it to notice. And is he good anymore?
No.
He slimmed down after he took the year off, would go to WWE and everything else and be on The Masked Singer. But like all of a sudden now he never really gained that bulk back, and he's just a shadow of his former self. It's kind of crazy. I mean, just what they have to go through. I mean, what's his name? Vernon Davis is on Dancing with the Stars. And
I knew we were going to go to Dancing with the Stars. I knew it. Go on.
You knew what?
I knew that we were going to go to Dancing with the Stars. I have no problem with that. Continue.
Oh, well, there's certain things I have to watch. I'm entirely claiming that The Masked Singer I watch on my own. But Dance Through the Stars is one of those things that I don't mind watching with my wife. If I'm going to watch sports, I have to watch certain things, and that's one of the ones I don't mind. But he was on there, and he's still, like, ripped, but he's, like, way down from where he used to be. And, like, it almost looks like he's healthy, as opposed to, like, action figure of himself. You know what I mean? Most of these guys seem like action figures of themselves, and it can't be healthy. DK Metcalf, like, they had pictures of him with his shirt off when he was during the Patriots Seahawks game, which was a great game, and actually one of the more acceptable losses the Patriots have had over the last few years. I feel better about the team after that loss than I did going into the game. But DK Metcalf literally looks like he's made out of plastic. Like, he's that ripped. And that just cannot be a healthy thing.
No, it can't be. And that's sort of like why, I mean, like when I look at all these people, I used to joke with somebody who was a neighbor of mine. And she would work out, her and her husband, like all the time, every day. And they were always sick. So like, Jesus Christ, we're the same age. You think you look good? 10 years from now, I'm gonna look the same, and you're gonna be sick.
Yeah.
Like, just too much of anything is bad.
That's basically true.
Says the guy who's gonna have his 5th Heineken right now. One of the beers I can get here. All right, so sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, let's so we can sort of like segue this out to a non-death note. The International Tennis Hall of Fame. Oh, sorry.
I said what?
The International Tennis Hall of Fame has announced their finalists for the 2021 class. Some interesting names, but every time I look at the Tennis Hall of Fame and whenever they have a class, and when it's just like, man, the bar is pretty low to get into that hall.
Yeah.
Like, am I wrong in that? I don't think so.
I think that one of these is certainly like the group of 9 ladies.
I do like that.
So actually, why don't you go through the ballot first? So we'll talk about it in a second.
Sure. All right. So the 2021 ballot, pretty much the biggest name on that in terms of the players, Leighton Hewitt, which is one of those careers he started off like with a fire and then kind of burned out. The youngest man at that point, I don't know if he still is, to be number 1. Won the U.S. Open and Wimbledon, but then never did much after that. Lisa Raymond from the United States, 11 Grand Slam titles, but all as a double, but that's okay. That's fine. Juan, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm humming along.
Oh, okay, sorry. Juan Carlos Ferraro, French Open champion in 2003, was number 1 for a cup of coffee. Jonas Bjorkman from Sweden, not a member of ABBA.
Another doubles player.
But yes, another doubles
player.
Yeah, another doubles player. 9 major doubles title and former doubles number 1. And Sergei Bruguera of Spain, 2-time French champion. I mean, some good
clay court specialist, one of the toughest guys to beat on clay.
Right. So, like, again, some good tennis players, but nobody strikes me as a superstar here.
I mean, no. Looking at those names, my first thought is that Hewitt is the one I would put in.
Mm-hmm.
But it generally is 1 or 2 who get in. So last year they had Mary Pierce, Lina, and Yevgeny Kafelnikov got in. So there's 2 or 3 who get in all the time. So my guess is if there's going to be 2 out of these, it's likely to be Hewitt and somebody.
Right. Yeah, I'd agree with you.
So Hewitt and my guess, it wouldn't surprise me if it's Hewitt and maybe Lisa Raymond.
Yeah,
might be the other one.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Bruguera and Ferraro both were good. I don't know. I personally, between the two of them, I know that Ferraro got to number one, but Ferraro was so good on clay that it was almost unfair when you played him. That's back when I really followed tennis. There was a time I was a massive tennis.
Then here's what I want to ask you, because I'm not a tennis guy. I mean, I'm just starting to play that with my wife, and we really enjoy that, but I don't watch it. I even though now I'm playing. What is it about playing on clay that is so different than playing on, I won't say grass, but turf or whatever it is? Like, what don't I understand?
All surfaces. So I grew up. My high school. I played in high school for a little bit, but in our high school courts, practice courts were clay, and our actual competition courts were hard court. Hard court, the ball moves way faster. It bounces differently. The rallies tend to be shorter. On clay, it's a slower game, and it's more tactical.
Okay.
So where someone like Kafelnikov, I just brought up, could overpower someone at the U.S. Open, he was terrible. Well, he wasn't terrible. He was not nearly as good on clay because his big serve and everything else game just didn't work the same way because the ball gets deadened on the bounces. And also the lines become more of in clay because they're not drawn on. They're actually like stapled in, essentially, or nailed onto the board.
Oh, okay.
So you can have like weird variations when you hit the lines in clay, whereas opposed to just painted on or limed on with grass or painted on a hard court. They're actually up above the surface a little bit. I'm talking a millimeter, 2 millimeters above the surface. Or, well, I'm sorry, for our American listeners, that's still millimeters. They're not even going to try and put it in inches. So it's a very different game. Practicing on clay and then playing. I wish we'd done it the other way around. I wish we'd practiced on hard court and played on clay. Because the ball just moves faster on hard court than it does on clay.
Okay.
So it's a much more tactical game.
Okay.
No, you have to think. You can overpower people, but you're not going to as much. And it's not as hard on your legs as hard court is. It's a little bit softer on your knees. It's easier to play longer on clay than it is on hard court, at least too much for me.
So is that sort of like favoring the more cerebral tennis player as opposed to the more athletic?
I'd say, or the ones who are more into spins. Like if you like, So if you like drop shots and backspin and like all those other ones, I would say spin has a lot more to do on clay too. So it's also harder to cheat on clay because if you're like, is the ball in or out? There's actually a mark.
Okay.
Go point to it.
So Serena Williams would be less upset.
In high school tennis, as far as I could tell. So
it's just I was just gonna say. So Serena would be less upset.
Yeah, you're like, was that in or out? You just go point out, like that was it.
Nice. So there's two contributors. One, Dennis Vandermeer, legendary coach. They called him the teacher of teachers. But the real interesting one here is this original 9. I never heard him called that, but it's a beautiful name. So these were the 9 women who essentially stood up to the World Tennis Association. Do I have that?
It's the WTA now, but I don't know what it was at the time.
Okay. But they essentially protested because they were not getting equal pay. And you and I, we've had many conversations about equal pay when it's certainly warranted. And in tennis, it completely is. Because women have been an equal draw for decades, pretty much for both of our lifetimes anyway. I always remembered the top women being... I remember Martina Navratilova being always in the same breath as John McEnroe when I was a kid. Yeah, Martina
Navratilova, that whole era. So Martina Navratilova, Chrissy Everett, Steffi Graf, Arancha Sanchez Vicario, Gabriela Sabatini, like all those people were just as big as stars at that point as because when they were all popular too, was the kind of the tail end of the great '70s run for tennis before Sampras and company took over in the '90s. That mid '80s period that you and I probably were more aware of it was very much dominated by the women. Like McEnroe and Connors were on their way down. Boris Becker was in there. Stefan Edberg, Yvonne Lendl, folks like that. But the women, particularly not Slovan, dropped. And eventually Monica Seles, before she was dead. That they were just as big as stars. But anyway, so explain what the original 9 did.
Yeah, so it's comprised of 7 Americans, 2 Australians, Peaches Barkowitz, Rosie Calais, Cassis, apologies if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly, Julie Hedelman, Billie Jean King, Christy Pigeon, Nancy Ritchie, Valerie Ziegenfuss, and the 2 Aussies, Julie Taggart-Dalton, and Carrie Melville Reid. As the story goes, was it 1970? Well, 50 years, so in 1970, where they were sort of upset that they were drawing the same crowd as men, but being paid like a fraction, around 1/8, from what I've read, of what the men were, even though they were drawing the same kind of crowd. And their belief was, okay, yeah, maybe we can't beat the men. It doesn't matter. We're still putting asses in seats, which is really what it's all about. It's even today, like Ronda Rousey, like 3 years ago, I always go back to her, was the biggest name in mixed martial arts. Could she defeat some of the men that she was outdrawing? No, didn't matter. People paid to see her. I know I'm one of those who did. I paid many times to watch a Ronda Rousey fight. And that was their point. And it originated the Virginia Slims tour. And they gave up so much. That was such a huge risk. Because they gave up a ranking, like a world ranking, the ability to play for their country in any international tournaments. What they gave up is astronomical. And if you haven't seen the film, crap, what was it called? The one that Emma Stone played Billie Jean King. I'm blanking on what it was. What the name was.
Yeah, I read it too, but I know what you're talking about. The one with the match with, what's his name? Yeah,
with Bobby Riggs, played by Steve Carell.
Bobby Riggs.
Yeah, it doesn't even, either way, that film sort of touched on the fight by Billie Jean King and the rest of the women there to bring pay equity in a sport that is reflected that it should be equal.
Yeah, Battle of the Sexes is what it was called.
Battle of the Sexes, thank you. So, and again, you and I, we've had this conversation many times. Like, I believe, I consider myself a disciple of logic. And I've talked a lot about, sometimes I rag on the WNBA, and I probably shouldn't, but I do, and I'm going to again. The WNBA players don't get paid what the NBA players do because they shouldn't, because they don't draw the same. Women's tennis is different, and it has been for pretty much my entire lifetime. Fair is fair, and they fought for fair.
And there's certain sports like gymnastics and figure skating that I would say that I know they're most of the real money is made when they're amateurs. But those are 2 sports that men and women compete in that the women should probably compete.
No, that's very true. I'm sure that Christy Yamaguchi probably made a lot more when she was a professional than Brian Boitano. Probably. I mean, I don't know for sure, but I'd say that.
Victoria Bonoli definitely should have. She was amazing. She was so good they banned her big move because it was too dangerous for people and people couldn't land it except for her. So.
Oh my God! Yeah, I remember that. Netflix even did sort of like
the flip she used to do in like the middle of the ice was death-defying and amazing. And they're like, no, nobody can do it, including you.
Mm-hmm.
So
here's sort of like a random sort of like flash from my past that I either may or may not edit out. I dated this one girl in Ottawa when I was going to school there, and I took her to. She was obsessed with figure skating, so I took her to was it like a Nutcracker on Ice, starring Oksana Bayul.
okay.
Which was sold out at the first arena that the Senators played. So like would seat about like 10,000. I can say this: I don't think that it would have been any. If it was led by a male, that wouldn't have been sold out.
No, probably not. Yeah, probably not.
Mm.
But anyway, going back to the 9 ladies. So 3 of them are already in the Tennis Hall of Fame. Clearly, Billie Jean King, as everyone would suspect.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy Ritchie and Rosie Casals.
Okay.
are all Hall of Famers already. So I mean, these weren't nobodies who were doing this. It wasn't like 8 people in Billie Jean King.
Right.
They basically signed contracts for $1, created the Virginia Slims competition. So it's going to have athletic competition sponsored by cigarette companies. And really changed tennis. It's one of those things like, it's hard to believe now that I know who he is. I didn't know who he was, honestly, until last year. With the Pro Football Hall of Fame, I don't understand how Ralph Hay, who's the guy who basically convinced the NFL to exist, isn't in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It seems like he should have just been like the founder of the league, should have been there already, and now we're 100 years in, and he's still not in. This also seems like why, other than maybe they couldn't think of it creatively, why we've waited 50 years for the people who basically completely changed the women's tour to be honored as a group.
Do you think that if there wasn't the Battle of the Sexes movie, that this wouldn't have happened? What's that?
I didn't hear you. Can you say it again?
Oh yeah, sorry. Do you think like if it wasn't for the film that Battle of the Sexes, that this wouldn't even be a nominee?
I'd like to think the answer to that is no. Emma Stone was really good in that movie, but that movie was not really good. That movie should have been better. So I would like to think the answer is no, because, I mean, it was also 3 years ago. But also, they're doing this category once every 4 years now. Mm. So this is the first time since that movie came out that they would have had this category. So I don't know the real answer to it. It may have just been the 50th anniversary also had something to do with it as well. But they should just already... And again, they may have not have been creative enough to figure this out for a while, but they should just be in as a group. They all should have been in as a group for what they did and the bravery they showed and the way they changed the game already. So
I think actually you just sort of hit the nail on the head. Just the creativity, just probably they never thought of it until recently.
Right. Yeah. It may honestly have been. I mean, the NBA just keeps inducting teams, and they've just been like, wait, why can't we do that? Because it's not like there's teams for tennis generally, unless you're doing Davis Cup or whatever. Mm-hmm. That you don't think of it. So that may have just been it. And then finally, like, wait, it's the 50th anniversary of this. We should be doing something about it. Why don't we just put them all in? So I don't think there's any chance they don't get elected.
Oh, God, yeah. I'd say that's a bigger lock than Pat Benatar. Oh, wait a minute.
or Motley Crue being on the ballot.
Yeah, exactly.
Or who's the other one who we were convinced to do? Oh, Oasis.
Yeah. You never know. That's why we have these conversations. So next week, I don't know what we've got, but I do know this. I will be announcing the first ever official NotInHallOfFame.com Middle Reliever Award for the National League and American League.
Wow.
The Middle Reliever of the Year, I think something that is long overdue, and that's why I'm here. So, agents of the world, agents of the baseball world, sign your player. You can put that into their contract where they can win an extra $10,000 by being named the middle reliever of the world. World? Yeah, why not? Middle reliever.
Middle reliever of the. I mean, it's the World Series. Why not the middle reliever of the world? That's fine.
Okay, middle reliever of the National League and the American League. The first ever of its kind.
Can we call it like the Kent Tekulve Award in the National League and something else in the American League?
Mike Timlin?
Mike Timlin, although he closed games too. But yeah, Timlin's somebody. Alan Embry.
Wasn't Tekulve a closer?
I'm sorry?
Wasn't Tekulve a closer?
Probably. I just remember Kent Tekulve in his Coke bottle glasses. I was never sure how he could see the plate. So, for our younger viewers, we all used to collect baseball cards. So, yeah, I'd have to figure out who the middle relievers be, because eventually all the middle relievers are good become closers. So, I mean, even Timlin was a closer. Alan Embry was a closer. Eventually, there aren't that many who stay middle relievers for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, in our Jays mini dynasty, it was Dwayne Ward setting up Tom Henke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Dwayne Ward, that's a good one. I haven't thought of him in years.
So, yeah, when I do this whole retro from 1980, he'll probably win a couple of those. I don't know. I don't think his agent can help him now, but still. So we have that on the docket for next week. And like we always say, something's going to come up because something always does.
Yeah, one thing we didn't get to talk about this week, because we're a long way in, is the new Rolling Stone 500.
You know what?
That we both really haven't had a chance to take a look at.
Yeah, okay.
It might make sense to take a look at that as well.
Definitely, yeah. That's something that, yeah, thank you for sending that out to me. I missed that completely. Because as I think I mentioned last week, I'm just going through not old albums, but the most critically acclaimed albums as per acclaimedmusic.net, which I'm sure will factor in the new top 500 albums from Rolling Stone, which, again, to very, very young viewers or listeners, an album is when an artist puts together a group of songs at one point in time.
I thought you were going to say Rolling Stone is a magazine. Magazines are...
That would work, too. Holy crap. I was just thinking about that, too, when I was looking at that link that you sent me. How many people under the age of 20 have bought an album, even downloaded a full album?
Almost none.
Totally. Now, how many albums did you and I buy, just purchase, before the age of 20? And it's got to, obviously it's not infinite, but it's a hell of a lot.
Like I said, I spent my youth investing wisely in CDs.
Mm-hmm. Jesus.
So, yeah, I mean, I have probably 400 to 500 CDs.
Yeah, I got rid of all of mine when I moved down to the Caribbean, but even then I wasn't listening to them anymore, just because of the whole digital era. But yeah, I do, oh God, I miss albums. I miss the whole concept of an artist just trying to put something together from A to Z. I don't even know how many even care anymore. Yeah,
it was cool. Sometime in April or May, 93.1 here in Chicago is a legendary music station, and they spent an entire day just playing one side of albums, on vinyl, back to back to back to back, and it was so cool all day. Where they're with everything going on, let's not do DJs. They had no commercials, and they spent the entire day just playing half of Van Morrison's. Is that Moondance? It's Van Morrison's Moondance is basically what it could be the greatest album of all time. There's no bad songs or anything on that album. They did Sgt. Pepper. They did Dark Side of the Moon. They did all sorts of stuff, and it was awesome. And it just made me realize like how much we just have. It's one-offs now, essentially. It's getting the one song and going from there. At the same time, you have to understand that that's probably better for the artist, and that the album era was incredibly exploitative of them. I mean, Weird Al's last album was his 14th, and he finally finished his contract.
Oh my God!
He was free of the record contract. Yeah, it took him 14 albums to get out.
Oh wow!
And so, like, it was incredibly exploitative of the artist, and at some level, it gave protection. And this way is a little bit better, but you do lose the full storytelling this way. Like, you might have somebody try and do the Dark Side of the Moon to Alice in Wonderland, something along those lines again. But it's going to be few and far between. There are some bands out there still making albums and not collections of songs. Well, not that many. I mean, they've gone the way of music videos some as well. But who's watching?
No, it's funny you bring up Dark Side. 'Cause I think like back in my college days, no, the story does not involve a midget. Where we had heard, me and a couple other people, that apparently if you like listen to that next to like The Wizard of Oz, like it's the whole. And we did that. Yeah, did a couple lines, and it wasn't true. didn't match at all.
It 100% is. We lined it up.
Well, the lines I was working on, it didn't work.
No, it 100% lined up. I've done it twice with people.
Oh crap! Then I must have been doing the wrong lines.
Yeah, it 100% lines up with it. The most obvious place is when the Wicked Witch appears as the lady in the bicycle. Is the change point in the album. There's bells in the album as you're starting. I think it's Money, and it's the most obvious. They're like, okay, now I know we're on. Like as soon as you see the bicycle, you hear a bell from the album, and that's when you're 100% sure it's working. So, but if you're off by like a second, it's weird. It doesn't work.
Maybe that might have been it. My timing has never been my strength. Nice. All right, Evan. I guess we'll be doing this again next week. Not along the lines of Dark Side.
Probably not. And by the way, I am compiling my list of the first-time eligibles. I don't know if we're ever going to get people coming out. I am counting them down on Twitter. I've done number 56, Arion, who the only reason Arion is 56 is there's nothing he's done that I enjoy.
All right, I'll have to find that, and I'll keep retweeting them.
Yeah, 55 is the Country Teasers, who is a punk band from Scotland, who I do enjoy, but never had any hits. And 54 is French duo Air, who are kind of weird. So I'm working my way down. Pretty soon we'll be getting to Slash's Snake Pit. I'm still finalizing. I'm putting them up as soon as I'm sure. Like this is where they're going to be. Well, we have one more coming out tonight, who I believe is. Hold on, let me open up my thing here. Next one out is going to be at 53. Feel open. No, open. 53 right now. I have the Flower Kings from Uppsala, Sweden, who are a really 1990s prog rock band, which is going to be hard enough. Being a Swedish prog rock band is not probably getting you in the hall. So they'll be up next. But we're going to work our way to the top two, who we all know is Jay-Z and the Foo Fighters.
Very true.
Order.
Very true.
So there's not much arguing about that. So no need to keep that a secret. But that's where we'll be working our way up there. It's much more interesting, like 3 through 7, and then like 8 through 30, as to where they end up, as opposed to 1 and 2.
That's why we love lists, man.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I left out. Well, I asked you this last week. I left out. I brought up Garbage, Wilco, and the Chemical Brothers. I forgot Slater Kinney. where would you put them? Because Slater Kinney, I have is eligible this year. Some people had them eligible last year. Part of the problem we all have is we don't know who's eligible when by the Hall
have
standards.
them behind only Wilco.
So you'd have them fourth.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. I have them in front of the Chemical Brothers. I was just like 50-50 on garbage just because,
well,
let's be honest, chick duos have trouble getting in the Hall.
True. Like, in terms of my personal enjoyment, garbage is actually way ahead of the others, but...
agreed again, and I said last week that I'm not rational about garbage.
Yeah.
So that is kind of... I love music with grit and a female singer. That's a lot of the music I listen to on my own. It's strange. It's people like Gin Wigmore. I don't know if you know who that is. She's from New Zealand. But people like Gin Wigmore and Halsey and people like that are people who I spend a lot of my time listening to when I'm doing other things. And then I also listen to like Dutch electro swing. So
not to sound transcentric, but I love women with balls.
Fair enough.
And on that note,
I'll talk to you next week.
All right, sounds good. Take care. Thank you so much for listening. We hope everyone out there stays safe and look for new regular content from us at nothinhalloffame.com. We're going to have another episode of How the Hell Did This Get to Number 1 coming out soon, where we're going to be looking at Sinead O'Connor's Nothing Compares to You, and we're going to be debuting shortly a new show. How this crap, or actually, what are we going to call it? We're going to call it this. This crap was on national television. All right, I'm still obviously working with the title, but hey, everything's a work in progress. I'm a work in progress. You're a work in progress. I'm a pepper. You're a pepper. Wouldn't you want to be a pepper too? Stay safe, everyone.